of a take two on this. Welcome back this time around. We went a little early the last time out. Still getting used to the timing differences here with the LJL being back on stage over in Japan, which does put us in a bit of an interesting position working out how long break should be, which incidentally was a lot longer than we had on paper. But either way, we're back and we're here to talk about CGA versus V3.
We literally have a podcast for content like that. I know we can bring it to live every so often, but, you know, we try and keep things slick, keep things rolling. And CGA will try and keep their short streak rolling as well, because V3 have a similar one of 2-0 coming out of week 1. We talked a little bit about some matchups we're really excited for. Talking about jungle, talking about top for me as well. So V3, obviously very much impressed in week 1. They have our game of the week just after this too, versus Rascal Jester, which is a barn burner to the very highest extent in the LJL, particularly when they're both coming out 2-0. They both swung at DFM and landed true on that one. Of course, we're going to go back and refresh ourselves on what happened on DFM's games after we're done with our portion of the day too, after we've done our 4 games. Of course, we're only here for 2 more. We're going to do the first 3 of the day. But then we'll have to see who's going to be keeping pace with these teams. I mean, at this point, if CGA take another win, then V3 take one of Rascal Jester, suddenly CGA find themselves in that highly coveted leading pack. They find themselves at 3-1 and potentially pushing on to the middle parts of the split coming into weeks 3 and 4. They can start making a very good claim and staking themselves for playoffs.
Well, they certainly can, but of course they've got to do so versus V3, who have looked very, very clean, all things said and done. It was a tough-ish game versus DFM. They had to come back in that one, if I recall correctly. They were down a fair amount. They were down a fair amount until there was some great outplays towards the top side from the likes of Mujin in particular, who was a monster on double Lee Sin duty last week. I wonder whether CGA might remove that from the pool this time around. But my question and worry for CGA here is that obviously versus Sengoku Gaming, Sengoku explosive in the early game. Very, very good at getting the leads, and then they tend to stall out in mid game, which is where CGA thrive. They're really good at finding ways to come back from deficits and then play themselves into an advantage, considering they sometimes have some unfortunate laning stats towards particularly the bot side of the map. V3 don't tend to make the same errors in mid-game that Sengoku do. They're a little less explosive in the early game, perhaps, as a result, but they don't tend to make the same errors. And I worry for CGA in terms of their ability to come back if they are going to give up 2,000-3,000 gold lead in the early game.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, Sengoku are the gut punch team where they really just hit you very hard through bot lane CB2 most of the time. And that's where they get their early game leads. What was interesting for me last split was actually they could go towards the center and they could have some very interesting games that way too, where it wasn't traditional bot lane TV2 carry focus. They had Camille's, they had the centers and stuff like that. Of course, they went back towards that TV2 style towards CGA. V3 on Reiner, they looked good last week. They did. They really aren't the team which will play through them to a win like Sengoku will. Maybe that actually favors CGA in some ways because, as you're saying, one of the things I was worried about for CGA versus Sengoku, worried for Sengoku versus CGA is that while their bot lane had been good in week 1, it wasn't potentially as dominant as it could have been, and that maybe allowed Milan a longer leash than he was, potentially having in spring. Of course, even in that game, he was crushed, and then he found ways to come back. And for me, Milan ended up being the MVP of those team fights. If not, I mean, the whole game a bit hard to say because, of course, the laning phase was so rough. But the team fights, it really was Milan carrying through that. Against V3, against Holland Reiner, who are solid, but not, again, as we said, not really the team to blow open that lane. Maybe, yet again, there is a way for Milan to get themselves involved in the game because when he is, CGA look pretty good. And I believe, actually, Milan is also, I think it's also their birthday today as well.
Is it Milan's birthday today?
There was some messages hanging around.
Happy birthday to Milan. We'll double check on that one for you guys. I'll leave Namara to do that. Instead, I'll take the reins for half a second while he's doing some sleuthing on the dates of birth of the various players here.
It is, yes.
It is indeed his birthday. Yeah. Thank you again over to Hina in the Discord for giving us that info on the backside of it. So yeah, congratulations to Milan. It's a great win. Yeah, start off the day.
Yeah, if you want to see any of that translated LJL content, we retweet out Hina stuff a fair amount of time. They do a lot of work on game days, and they're very proficient at what they do. And we get to hear a little bit more into the thoughts and processes of each of these LJL players.
Yeah, and credit over to Milan, of course, for turning it around. He said it was a big turnaround game. But, on the other side of that, down 50 CS, rough time in the bot side. Again, I'm not really sure what else they could have done. They survived the first dive, but lost some CS. They don't survive the second dive because they had the double teleports, which weren't channeled, and it gets rough. And it's like, okay, this is the game plan from Sengoku Gaming, and eventually Milan just has to ult a few ways until they're at a point where Lethality MF gets to bullet time people. And that was great news. I just wonder whether V3 potentially have other win conditions, and that gets a bit scary, of course, because of course Hollow, pretty good carry in his own right. He's still a bit newer to the stage, much like Milan is as well. But Ace is very veteran, Muujin very veteran, and also very good on the champions at the minute. Cog as well has got some weird picks available to carry through. We saw Kale last year. He's done Ivan last split. There is a lot up there. Tristana top. And I don't know whether V3 will be so bold as to give Nap the Gwen as well, now that we've seen he can play.
No. And what we saw again was Gwen with that counter pick of the Lulu picked in that same rotation, just be like, okay, no, you're not going to get the Lulu. And Alchemy had a good team fight game on that too, even if the laning phase was rougher. Of course, Cog, we talked about them being a very proficient top laner on stuff like the Gnar and a couple of other picks. Question is, can they get themselves a laning phase that can upset Nap as well on that top side? Because when CG have a strong top side, things go very well. Honestly, okay, we're into pick and trend already, Daddy. There is a chance we get the Gwen Lulu from V3 this time.
Oh boy, it's been left open. That's the Ezreal Senna bans, which has been a LJL thing. It appears that happened last game as well. Lucian, Akali, Renekton also seem like fairly strong bans. Does leave the Gwen open, as we're saying. Cassin gets Jin Zhao. The Lulu in response, looking like a niddly choice for Muujin. He's very good at that one, though. He's offering something like a volley bear or something, as well as, again, does lock that one in. CJ, as you can see over on the blue side, V3 on the red. We'll quickly run through names because we didn't get a chance to do that earlier. Yep. So Nap, Cassin, Nahia, Milan, and Alchemy still the round up for CGA. V3 on the other hand, though.
It's Cog, Muujin, Ace, Hollow, and Rhino. So going back to what's going on in draft right now, of course, V3 did not choose to pick up that Gwen. You see the Ezreal and the Senna bans quite a lot of the time on blue side, because on your R1, R2, you can pick up Ezreal Karma, Sanatarm Kenj, something like that, which does flex around the map pretty well at that point. But it also gives you the ability to have a very stable, hard to unlock bot side, which then starts giving you a rock to play around the rest of the map with. So we have LeBlanc, we have Gwen locked in. Again, hyper mobile top side of the map for CJ. Exactly what they did last game.
Yeah, just switch out the Kha'Zix for the Jin Zhao, and that's a fairly good AP AD combo. You could do a lot of work with that. We saw what Nathan's LeBlanc was able to do when he was able to flit around the place. Nap proved his mettle on the Gwen, of course. That could well be a Volibear top for Cog. He's played it before, and as far as I understand it, Volibear absolutely shreds Gwen in lane.
So, yes, to an extent, Volibear has some trading patterns versus the Gwen, which are very good. Again, like your Q into the E. If you get an E onto an enemy champion and yourself with the shield and then the extra damage, there are a few champions that out-trade that. One of the things is actually a Renekton with an empowered W to get through that, right? Ace, though, well, all of this is said and done, gets their hands on one of maybe their signature champions. Because, I mean, I think for us, we have a couple of signature champions. There's like the Set mid, there's the Galio mid, there's the Karma. A lot of these champions which can sack off lane, run somewhere else on the map, and make things very difficult for the enemy. So if you're playing around strong, dueling, engaging junglers and solo lanes with hypermobility, you have to be aware that the Galio can drop down on their head. Question is, can you survive lane versus Nathan's LeBlanc? Ramani on the Silas had a rougher time of it, did get that one solo kill, but that was the end of the good news because he went down 60 CS, went down a significant amount of kills too, was a set of 1 of 3, 1 of 4. So V3, what are your combos? Are CGA suddenly looking to ban out stuff like the Camille as well? Is that something they want to get rid of?
They do.
And there you go. So that's one of the Galio combos denied. What's their top side going to look like now? What's their AD carry going to look like?
Still some options with the Thresh locked in. That means that Lulu probably going top, Volibear therefore going jungle. Yeah. I heard that you mentioned as well that Lulu was a pretty good answer into the Gwen.
That has been a competitive counter pick into Gwen, because Gwen cannot really close down the Lulu, gets polymorphed, gets slowed, and gets poked out of lane too. So you got to get up in CS, and Gwen doesn't get to start taking turret plates and get priority.
All right, that does mean that V3 now are putting all eyes on the Hollow basket for a lot of their damage. Lulu, generally speaking, very much an enchanter, a buffer. Volibear decent burst, but falls off post Divine Sundra pretty hard. So he's going to need to carry. And I guess versus Milan and Alchemy, you can see that maybe that's the point of pressure they decided to go towards. Perhaps a touch against our expectations, but it's certainly a V3 comp of all. It certainly plays into a number of their players' strengths, particularly the Galio for Ace. They're thinking about going for the Jin because, of course, V3 did double ban out the AD carry second round. So it'll be Jin and Nautilus. I don't know about Jin into a lot of bruises here. What are your thoughts here?
It is long-range follow-up for the mobile top side. That's what ends up being. You're not aiming to be the primary carry. You're aiming to land W's onto someone that your solo lanes or your jungler are going towards as well. Potentially opens up a hyper carry, though, for V3. The Jinx.
There we go. We got you there.
The Jin. Oh, God. This is just so awkward. Jinx Thrash, strong lane, at level 9, you outrange most lanes in the game. Now you have a hyper carry through bot side. So V3, if they don't crush early, they don't play towards that 2v2, have the late game insurance with a Lulu ult, with Whimsy, with Lantern, probably a Guardian on top of that too, even if Rhino wants to be full peel. And then, of course, you have the Galio coming in as well with the heroic entrance. Don't have the Rakan for the ground entrance, sadly. So CJ will have to find a lot of different ways now to try and split apart V3, because when their 5-man unit assembles, difficult for CJ to pull it apart.
Exactly. There are more options to carry, I suspect, in terms of for CGA. Like Gwen gets ahead, that's a great option. Nation gets ahead, that's a great option. If the Jin gets ahead, you can blow people up. All of that stuff is good, but for V3, it is, as we said, all eyes on Hollow. This Jinx gets too far behind, and that's a risky comp to pull off if you can't play the single damage carry.
Yes, but now imagine that with Nation getting ahead, because if you manage to land a Mimic combo onto Hollow, and you blow the Galio ult for the Magic Shield, you blow the Wild Growth, there are ways then that you can start re-engaging again. CJ will have to show a similar kind of poise and creativity to blow some of these defensive tools before the fight really develops in earnest. You can do that as LeBlanc. The Gwen and the Jinzao kind of can't get out once they've gone in. Same with the Nautilus, right? This is very much for me on the LeBlanc to get those tools away from V3.
And if they can't, then you've got to rely on that all-in. And CGA certainly have all-in tools with the likes of the Nautilus and the Jinzao. They can definitely get their way into the thick of things. But that's kind of Galio's comfort zone as well, because everyone groups up for him to just drop down on them from the heavens. Could get very interesting, that's for sure. Onto the Rift. 5-man fan. Doesn't look like we're getting any aggressive level 1 actions. Any summoners of note or runes of note? The one I'm seeing is Nap with Ghost.
Okay, so about Gwen versus Lulu, we said, oh yeah, Lulu's kind of good into Gwen. Can't really close them down. The Glitter Lances, the Hell Pixels, they just do too much. You get polymorph when you get close. Well, I mean, Ghost helps you keep running at them.
I like that adaptation. I really do.
Same. And one of my worries for V3 this game is that, yes, your 5v5 is good, but how do your solo lanes go? Because if you get Gwen versus the Galio and the LeBlanc versus the Lulu inside lane allocation, V3 are not happy with that.
No.
Because Gwen has the continued damage output, has the Conqueror to take down Galio, and Galio cannot outburst the Gwen. If you, in Days of Old, where you build full AP, get very, very strong, yes, you could actually duel against a lot of these common counters nowadays, because the problem with Galio is that your cooldowns are so long that you use up your burst and then you cannot trade after that point. You have to run. You don't get round to your second round of cooldowns. Gwen kills you in between those times. And then, of course, LeBlanc, one of the more favorable matchups in side lanes, just in general, so that LeBlanc is a good side laning champion. Nation spots out Mugen very early, has the early priority. Ace penned back to their tower.
Once again, we've got some pretty interesting drafts, I think is the way to phrase it, in terms of like how we're talking about this.
They interest you.
They do. They really do. But plainly because they once again play very distinctly to what I expect of these teams. V3 with Ace on Galio. And I mean, okay, I take that back to some extent in that, actually, it's not a top side focus for V3, just being more of a 2020 thing. But, this is kind of, it's also things like Cog and a bit of a weird enchanter top lane. That's not anything dissimilar. Reiner on the Thresh, Ace on the Galio, a hyper carry bot. That's quintessential 2020 V3. It's an old school strat from them, and Twitter loves the V3 option here. And I can't blame them with how they played week 1, but things like the adaptation of the Ghost and stuff, I think this should be really interesting to see how it plays out.
But do they have the middle cot vote? I'm not so sure on that.
Well,
it's very
does
difficult.
middle cot really count as a vote? Like, I don't trust his ability to get through day to day. Never mind put distinct analysis out. What can I say?
Now,
we love middle cot.
We're going to have to clip that and send that to them.
That's fine.
I'll
stand by that.
Yeah. Well, gonna have to stand by Alchemy as they get hooked
into the flame choppers, but does manage to buffer that one out pretty well. But here comes Mugen thundering his way down, forced to flash and heal out of Milan to keep his bot laner alive.
So Ryana gets bot side brush control with hook champions. It is very important because if you land that first CC, you can actually get a lot of burst out before the return aftershock comes in. Look like Alchemy does at least get that. Mugen has a time-efficient gank towards that bot side. It is at the cost of Kassin getting through their bot side quicker, though, and this mid lane matchup for Ace is not really going that well in the early game. Doesn't tend to, but there's no way this Galio can help their jungler just yet.
Nope, no way to make that one happen. It's early pressure for V3 bot side, which is kind of what we were expecting, and at least as it stands, depending on how the waves match up, you will probably see a 5 or so CS lead for the Jinx and an early back as well to try and pick up the double longsword, as you saw just picked up there. Kassin back gets himself a pickaxe, and Cog was just holding that wave a little bit close to tower, afraid of potentially getting ganked, and unfortunately for him, didn't get dove either. That's the way we phrase that one, and everything resets with a non-existent lead for either team.
So, I mean, what Nap was doing there is you could greed for those 1 or 2 minions, but you get poked out, and actually that keeps the wave pushed into tower, which is really not what you want. Nap sees that the wave is slow pushing back, gets a free reset, gets to get a Doran's shield alongside the Doran's ring. Very important, because if you're continually getting tagged by the picks and everything else, you actually regen a lot of HP off of the lower strength autos from someone like a Lulu. Compared to something like a Darius or whatever.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get the single auto. Actually, if you manage to just take a single auto, that Doran's shield gives you a lot of regen. In some cases, you actually regen more than the single auto. Kassin going towards topside as well, just to shield any potential attempt coming in from the wave crash. As Volibear was on that side of the map, unlikely to lead to anything, but still just doing their due diligence. And now, safely on that top side, we have ourselves, even early game so far, CGA, we're already behind at this point versus Sangoku.
Oh, they really were. Like, Gango and Enti literally took all plates, towers, double kill bot side by 10 minutes. Like, it was a disaster early game, and CJ so much to come back. So they managed to go to a mid game even, and that's pretty good for them, all things considered. They are the team with the worst stats at 15, as we said, but they still win about half their games purely because they have some ridiculous team fight and outplay potential the later the game goes. But I kind of want to ask this question, though. Like, teams aside, looking at these comps, my thoughts are that a quiet early game probably favors V3, all things said and done.
Nameplates off, yes. Nameplates on. CJ always prefer not being behind. Because yes. Even in an early game draft, they can find themselves very far behind. That's just how we now have a culmination
lane ganks from everybody.
Of players coming towards this bot side. Kassin, not seen just yet. I'm not seeing any pings down there. Reiner walking up, but then sees them.
There's a lantern behind, and of course the double traps in lane make this pretty obvious. Mugen gets revealed. That was nicely placed from Milan. He's like,
Captain,
got you now.
I'm trying to get towards bot lane, but my bear is too dummy thick.
He keeps alerting the Jhin. What will be alerted as well as the dragon being started here as a result of the push.
Okay.
But Metal Gear Solid memes aside, V3 make use of the pressure and time bot side to get something out of it. Some camps are now respawning for Mugen, so it doesn't lose too much in the way of timing on camps either. Because I accidentally turned my brother's chair around behind that. That was unintentional.
No. I was much like in League of Legends in history, unexpected rotations of this time of the chair variety. So CJ, this game of course had themselves dragon advantage. They won't have that this game. They've given up that first dragon. Not sure what the second one is. I didn't actually end up catching that. I'm not sure if we were shown it. But still, even against that Kalista, they didn't give up those dragons last time, actually. They traded it when, because of course, Sangoku looked to take plates instead of dragons. This game, V3, know they have the late game scaling comp. They say, we don't need the early game right now, or the early gold right now, because things are even. And as you're saying, that kind of on, with nameplates off, that does favor them. And as long as they deny some kind of turnaround soul condition, I think they are somewhat happy with that too.
Indeed. Gold. Dead even. Drake over to V3, but Al's already mentioned where this game should be for both teams, and you know, you do have the Gwen on the top side who's kind of surviving versus the Lulu. You do have a lot of burst. You know, you're not that worried about falling behind. You know, if you get your one item spikes, you know, you can definitely look for fights at that point for CGA and not feel like you've wasted your early game. But it is just a little bit nerve-wracking. We sort of say, well, Jinx is doing pretty well bot side. She's going to have a lot of ways to stay safe. Maybe this is the action we were looking for, though, with both junglers hit level sticks and start trading. The Stormbringer is here for Mugen, trying to get onto Cassin, who's got a Crescent Guard, but still dies. First Blood goes over to the Galio. Just a little bit too eager to contest and start fighting for this Herald.
That is such a rookie mistake from Cassin. You do not have priority in top lane. For the first time this game, you do not have priority in mid lane. And even if you did, Ace was level 6. What happens here? You see Reiner and you see Hollow show on mid-wave. At that point, you just realize, yeah, I'm pretty boned at this point. Uses the ult, just way too late at this point. Doesn't have a way to, of course, cancel out that volley barrel. Ult is unstoppable when it comes through. That is a very over-aggressive play that is rightfully punished from Cassin.
And that's the other side of Cassin. Sometimes he makes these wonderful, aggressive plays. It gives him a kind of, you know, spice of life to him. Joie de vivre, how you pronounce that particular phrase. My French is atrocious. I apologize to everyone listening. I'll go relearn that phrase because I thought it in my head and couldn't pronounce it. Apparently, either way, the point stands. At the other side of the coin for Cassin, much like my pronunciation, is you can go for something in your head that sounds good and then realize when you put it into action, it was a bad idea.
And what this does now with double buffs present now in this mid lane for the Galio is that the only lead which Nayan has is nullified. Sure, you have a 10 CS lead. They went towards a tier. They went towards a Dark Seal because Nation knew that they were going to be passively winning out in this lane. But Ace is more than happy now. They have survived the early lane. Congratulations. Galio goal 1 complete. You have not been slaughtered in lane.
Yes, exactly. And on the other side, V3 and Rhino were stopping being slaughtered in lane by themselves. They stood right by their tower. They pinged out exactly where they're expecting people to be. They're still going to look for fight. Mugen is here, but it's going to be a 3. V3, Rhino very low, but throws out the box. Galio. Here comes the hero's entrance, though. And Ace gets a second. Absolutely dogs him the taunts there. Tries to get out as LeBlanc with the distortion, but still going to go down. Hollow, not quite get it, actually. Nathan gets out with the reuse of the distortion. I thought he was dead, but actually it was just him disappearing back to where he came from.
It was the clone.
Yeah,
Kills the clone, and sadly don't get Jinx passed off of that.
I was bamboozled.
So, Cassin, what did you learn from that last time? Oh, well, if they arrived to the play first, that's kind of bad. And the Galio ult wasn't even used that last time. Yeah, the hook lands. It's onto a Jhin trap. That's good extra damage. Cool. Potentially an early kill. Except it's not, because you're not teleporting in with a Gwen. You're not teleporting in with anyone right now.
Milan has no mana. There's the hook afterwards. There's the Stormbringer. And Mugen dunks him straight back down. 3-0 in the early game, and V3 running away with it.
So, what did we say about V3 in our first of our pre-games? They are the cerebral team in the LJL. They understand what cards they have to play, and they play them appropriately. That's exactly what they're doing here. Honestly, it's not even that special. CGA are giving them the openings. Look what happens here. LeBlanc has eyes on Galio but knows that they cannot cancel him. Galio has gone missing. Oh, maybe we should probably start teleporting here. Nope, it's too late. Big circle comes up on the ground. Cassin has the ult up again. Doesn't matter yet. Again, LeBlanc gets caught, and luckily they have the passes up there. Get the second cast of the store from the Mimic, but as we said, the play doesn't even end here. CGA are playing to what V3's comp wants to do. They've not hit them early enough in the laning phase. They didn't go towards the Galio. Galio's now at 2. And Ace, on one of his signature picks, is off to the races.
He's down, 25 plus CS at this point. But the point is, he doesn't care. That saved his bot lane. That got the Jinx further ahead. He's got 2 kills. He's really not that far behind. And that is a worthy trade as far as I'm concerned.
Little hook over the wall. Doesn't really do much except poke Ashley.
That flame might have been a bit of a mistake, actually.
By doing absolutely nothing, Alchemy has out-traded Reiner. What a player this is!
Mind game them into that. I mean, it did buy time for Hollow to get more space to turret without Nautilus there, I suppose. They were memeing slightly, but with the Thresh doing his due diligence onto the Nautilus, gets Hollow more gold, more time. He's got 2 assists. He's got 3 plates. Feeling pretty happy. The one thing about going for the second Drake, of course, is that Nap gets alone time at the tower.
Oh, gosh,
but that's kind of it.
CJ have low rolled. It's an Infernal Soul on the Rift too. If you get tagged by a Jinx W in late game with that is for Milan about a third of your HP gone.
Yeah.
There's another potential dive coming in. There is no Stormbringer, but there is a Galio. Well, it's a long cooldown, but it's off right now. Oh dear, CGA.
Can you hear the sound? Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No, it's Ace on the Galio. The heroic entrance come through. 3 kills for him, a double kill bot. Feel like I've seen that one before. And CGA now down 0-5.
Oh.
Cassin will try and return the favor up towards the top side, but Cog is just making Cass's life nightmarish, and he gets to walk away with a crab rave. Top lane is gone.
Do you hear the people sing the song of angry men, sing the song of people who will not be dove again? God damn it! CGA just cannot keep their bot lane safe. They have failed to take away the defensive tools from V3 at the times where it was appropriate, and for me, the problem is that it was Kassin leading the charge. We said this right from the draft. I was like, oh yeah, so if you go in as the Jin Zhao, as the Gwen, you don't get out at that point. You need to finish the fight. At least LeBlanc can pop back. At least LeBlanc can go in for a full burst. But they're not going for early damage. They went for a tier. That's okay, but you can't do that and also go for the aggressive plays. It is straight disrespect and an unawareness from CGA of what V3 brings to the table. On the other side, though, V3 playing to their heart's content, playing to their tools and their win conditions. This is going completely the way they wanted. There's nothing really that's upset them so far.
No, and I trust V3 with a mid-game lead a little bit more than I do Sengoku, and they're in a fantastic position. The Galio and the Volley Bearer are heading up to be a damage threat on top of the Jinx, who's completed first item. Once again in a CGA game, the bottom tower goes down with all plates taken as well. 1,100 gold they got from that. Of course, towards the top side, at least Nap got 3 plates. He's on the Gwen, and he could be a carry threat if this game gets late enough. But you can see that, it's not even led to a gold in the top side because of all the global
Even
gold.
mid lanes ahead.
And then you just see, the bot side in particular, 1,500 gold ahead.
But then you look everywhere else and say, well, CJ have lost through bot. Well, presumably they have leads elsewhere, right? No, sadly not. Oh, it's not even the misfortune. It's not the misfortune, but he's using the ult to wave clear.
Boy. And the thing is, I can't even blame Milan.
No, you can't.
I need to stop the dive. This is what we do.
You know that you've got Volley Bear ult back up again. I'm actually not sure if Ace's ult is. It's not on. It's not there, but you do have the teleport. They still need to get themselves away from turret because it's not like Nation is getting any pressure into River either. Having Thresh on the other team means that LeBlanc is not as easily able to jump in and jump out. If the hook lands, LeBlanc dies, and you don't even have the safety net that you had in Season 10, and this is something which LJL LeBlanc did all the time. Build Banshee's Veil second, be the scout for your team, and also the burst threat. You don't have that right now. You certainly don't have it in this game when you've got a lot of cooldown, yes, but no way to save yourself if you get caught. Also, not really the damage to keep yourself a mobile threat.
And I've also got to add, actually, we call both junglers kind of the litmus tests for their teams.
Yep.
Muujin is 2-0-3, 100% kill participation, has got 2 dragons and a herald. Cassin is 0-2-0 and barely ahead of the Volley Bear and Farm.
Yep.
That is problematic. That says a lot about how this game is going. That is really concerning when you need Cassin to be one of your playmaking, frontlining, assassinating players.
And obviously one of the strengths of champions like both Jin Zhao and the Gwen is that, okay, if you can hold the enemy at range, that's awesome. They can't do that much damage to you. So yes, the Jinx is going to have trouble cutting through the front line whilst they have the Gwen W and the Jin Zhao ult available. That doesn't apply to the Volley Bear with the Galio on top of it too. If you have the Lulu ult coming in on top of that as well, that is Volley Bear ult, Lulu ult, Galio ult, which are going to slam you into the ground. Might be a temporary frontliner who can't be hit outside, from beyond a certain range, but I don't think CGA are going to have the ability to stand and fight and play around that.
We've got a dragon coming up in just over 40 seconds. It would be Infernal Soul point for V3. They are in a position where they would love to take this. First items are just about coming through for CGA, but of course with things like the block stopping off for the tier, she still gets the Leandris literally as I talk about it, so there'll at least be something resembling item parity here, but it's not quite the same. Nation gets something of a chunk, but it's not a huge amount.
It's a token effort. You still have the Galio ult, you still have the Guardian, the W shield from Thresh as well. This Jinx is more than safe. Ace even gets to shove in through topside. Dragon spawning, V3 have a cross map ready for it as well. Nap did have a teleport, wanted to be grouped with the team. CJ losing across the map yet again.
Of course, Galio does have both teleport and the heroic entrance, as we're mentioning. Dragon's live, but CJ haven't started yet. The Sky Splitter tags 2. Nation goes in and gets a chunk onto Hollow. That is the box, though. Now Alchemy caught in place. Gonna get a hook onto Hollow. Flashes away, but stays alive. He's got the wild growth, and now they're turning around. Cog in the backside is still there. They've got the Nautilus. They tried the dive. It nearly worked for CJ, but it's not quite there. The Hallowed Mist runs out. Milan stepped forward with the Gale Force, but can't quite get the last door out. The rockets keep flying. Jinx is excited, and the team fight win is there for V3 Esports. A valiant attempt, all things said and done for CGA, but they can't outplay this one.
5v5 is not where CGA thrive with this comp. They did have a good effort to get onto the Jinx. That's great and all, but they don't finish it. And V3 at the end of that win it without even using the Galio ult. That's how much they had left in the tank. What's happening here in the first place? You're looking for mid-priority. That's a double distort. That's the Mimic combo already used onto Hollow. But yes, there is so many shields. That's a Galio shield. That's a Lulu shield. No, it's the Thresh shield even. Cassin and Alchemy set up a front line alongside Nap on the Gwen too. But at this point, the Volibear is still a good low-range damage threat. And then the resets coming from the Jinx, you do not get to run away from that. I get that Milan was looking for the assassination play, but the flash away is just salt in the wound.
And the health bars of V3 were so low. If somebody had got some early gold, maybe that goes a bit different. But they don't. And you see that, there is decent damage there, but Nation, after the early chunk, just didn't get to go back in. It's good damage from Carson. It's good damage from Milan. Hell, not bad from Nap either. But it's just not enough. And there's so much beef at this point that, that damage just isn't getting kills.
It's not just beef as well, because, yes, that's damage on both sides, which it's in the favor of V3, but not by a crushing amount. But CGA's damage has probably gone into about 2,000 damage worth of shields from V3, which means that they don't get even a single kill. We're not on pace for a perfect game. Sadly, CGA did take a turret for V3 fans and for those who would want a perfect game. V3, though, I mean, what is stopping them now from just rolling up this game? They can deathball now. They've taken down the full ring of outer turret. CGA don't have vision across the river. Gwen is being held by the Lulu. Kogog is probably not going to even let them hit the turret. So you don't even have the ability to have Nap split push at this point. V3 have their ultimates up back yet again. CGA, are you going to run back into the maw of the beast, or are you going to have another play ready?
Maybe they have some options, because V3 blew every single flash in that last fight. Every single one of them. And maybe if you can do something like get a hold of Hollow, you can do some work as Nation there. Plays with fire a little bit there, but honestly, at this point, maybe that's what you have to do, because otherwise you will be facing a lot of fire.
Oh, he's checking the Baron. He's checking the Baron. Okay,
that's what he was doing.
I thought that was, wow, we're going to hit Hollow and Rhino, and this is like, that's really awkward. No, it was just checking the Baron. Slightly less catastrophic than what I initially thought. But again, this Jhin, right? It's not there as your primary carry either, right? Because you don't have that same 2-item spike which so many of the other champions have. You can do some damage against the lower range champions like the Galio, like the Volibear. Even then, you start falling off pretty considerably compared to most of the other AD carries in the meta right now. And you basically at that point, you are relegated to being utility follow-up bot. It's not realistically the most valuable playstyle, particularly when you don't have your ult available to you.
All right, let's take stock of the map. We've still got a while before the Infernal Drake comes up, which will probably be the last fight of this game, I suspect, in some ways. V3 are a fair amount ahead right now, nearly 5,000 gold, and I think they have one last roll of the Dice Nightmare, and it's a bad roll, but they've got one left. They get the second out of Taos. That's something in terms of map pressure, but I'm wondering what options they have. They just try and play the side lanes with the LeBlanc and the Gwen?
But well, I mean, for me, you were saying that the next fight is the last fight of the game. That's the last roll of the dice. I think they've already had their last roll. I think that last fight is enough. I think that's enough. CGA, honestly, when they lost Kassin in the river and then had that fight down bot, as soon as that fight down bot lane happened, I thought, this is difficult. The fight in mid lane sealed the deal for me because that was not the playstyle they should have been going towards. I think they found out too late into this game that they need to be splitting the map, using LeBlanc's pressure against both of these good matchups, using the Gwen and getting them to push in waves too. You've already given over a lot of gold over to V3.
And now you've only got a minute to split the map before you've got the Infernal Drake coming up. And instead, they'll try and jump in onto Muchin. They get a fairly decent choke, but Nathan can go back over the wall. The second distortion times out. He's still going to get out, though. Doesn't burn the flash. Has got the teleport. So can probably look to come back in with that.
Going straight into the Volibear, less valuable because he is one of the few champions that can instantly stun you in place with the Q, which means that they actually don't get to go back to that first install. It times out during the duration of that stun. And then, of course, there's the polymorph too. Their clone saves them, though. They don't have the clone for this next fight. That can be very important. V3 setting up a bush bait.
They are. Rhino's hook goes wide, though, and instead V3 leave to go in as a big hook from Alchemy, but it's on to Mugen. That's the heroic entrance. I don't know how much value it's going to get, though. They're going to try and retreat. Big damage from the needlework. That's doing a lot, but it's only a 1-for-1 right now. Milan, though, you got to remember, is dead. Cassin goes golden. He's going to try and stay alive as long as he can. Big double taunt from Ace, though, and now Hollow gets to run rampant. It is too little. It is too late. The zap is dodged away from, but Nap just can't run fast enough. The skip and slash and the hallowed mist buy time, and they will escape, but they are the sole remaining member of CGA to survive, and V3 just turn back for the Infernal Soul.
And V3, I thought I'd be saying this about DFM, all systems online, team fights in nominal fashion. V3, just clean up house. CGA, what are you doing? You can't go for a straight down the front engage whilst all of their cooldowns are available. Yes, okay, if you catch out Hollow with that hook, potentially things look better, but there is still a Lulu ult, still a Galio ult, still a front line to stand in front of them. The follow-up damage is Milan trying to Gale Force into 4 freaking people because he can't finish off the target. V3, they have, again,
that taunt.
They still have health bars to spare here. They have so much going through this. CGA, this is exactly what I said in the draft. You got to start taking these fights in multiple acts. Take away one of those cooldowns first. Go for a big a trade combo with your LeBlanc, because if they have everything available, there is no way in hell you kill the Jinx.
It's a Fnatic brush or nothing at this point for CGA. They're trying their best. More of Malmortius third item for this Jinx.
Just why not?
I mean, that's
why not?
Nation's the one person to genuinely think alongside Nap. It's double AP Solids. I think it's a great call. And I also want to call out that last flight. Alchemy flash to the hook. Hollow flashes it in turn. And it was the last play in some ways. They are going to Sky Splitter the bush. Won't get spotted and just head straight back in. But there's a control wall at the back of the pit. It's just, it's too obvious.
And that last fight is exactly why I said, I didn't think that was the quote-unquote last fight of the tier game. I didn't think that was the turning point. The turning point happened before that, because you can see the fruits of V3's early game dominance. They have an Infernal Soul now. I mean, again, that's the W hitting onto Milan. That's a quarter of the HP bar gone. Okay, slightly less damage than I would have thought. Maybe it's the Maw. I'll blame it on the Maw. If that was the Lord Doms, if that was anything else, it would have been more damage. But V3, very, very comfortable in this game. After this point, there is no realistic way for me V3 lose this game if they play the way that they have been playing. CGA, even if they split the map at this point, because they have the threat the Baron against them, because they don't win the grouped fights, and because their solo lanes are so strong, this isn't a Galio that you can pick off in a side lane. It's 7-0-4 from Ace, and the same with the Lulu, right? Still within touching distance of gold of even the Gwen, particularly with those assists involved. V3 have almost no place patterns at this point where they lose this game.
Nap and Nation both at 2 items is rapid fire second from Milan to add something, I guess, but you're looking at a 3-item Jinx and so much gold elsewhere. Like, I just don't think there is so little that CGA can do. Like, you can see Nation just trying their best to play to the side lanes, but it's going to get tricky, and just roaming up there now, they're going to start up the Baron and force the 5v5.
Yes, congratulations. The rapid fire cannon gives you 1 auto attack that outrages Jinx every 10 seconds. And you still have to get through the front line to do that. V3. Coco could get caught. Okay. Doesn't even get that.
Okay, there's Alchemy who's going in for the hook, but goes golden. Does Rhino. Hollow just deletes the North. Sent straight back to the depths. Nap teleports in, but Hollow excited, whimsied. Oh my days, Milan. He's trying to run the super mega death rocket. Puts him in the dirt. And they're going to turn straight back for the Baron. And Hollow, we asked to see whether he could step up as a solo carry with a lot of support, with a lot of enchanters, and he is turning up big time here. CGA just out of answers.
They're out of answers, and V3 have the damn playbook written for them. It's so obvious what they need to do. There is the outside chance of a Baron steal. Potentially that could be the way back in for CGA. They got to flip it, though.
Oh, Nap. Goodbye. The massive double rocket does their work. Nation is dead. Cassin trying to find their way in. The taunt comes through. The Shield of Durand does some work there for Ace. Crescent Guard. came out at the end of it, but it was no use. V3 got the Baron. They're getting out. It's 16-1. They have Infernal Soul. It's 9,000 gold in the lead, and this should be the push to end it all.
And 5v5s yet again. This time it's not even everyone grouped at once. V3 invite CGA to come into their line of vision. W hits from the Jinx. Jinx W has been such a good soft pick tool for so many seasons of League of Legends now. In fact, I remember the Flash Wolves being a very good team at playing around that back in their heyday as well. And it means that they get the pop off, they get the reset. And the thing is here, if you kill the Baron from V3 and you're still in the area, you actually get a reset from that too. Polymorph comes in. You don't have yourself a Banshee's Veil. You don't have yourself a sizable lead. You just get popped.
That's looking like all she wrote. The final remaining structures starting to fall. There is one outer tower remaining in the top lane, but that is a lonely, lonely consolation prize. And it's going to do nothing to save this bot wave. This nation distorts forward, but just gets polymorphed again. Because that's what he spent his time as, is a very cute squid. That's most of this game, possibly doing about as much damage as one as well. Out of their depth CGK. That's a Kraken, slightly different. Big assister there. Still dangerous on land, I suspect, whereas that squid is kind of...
The little sister, the cuttlefish.
Oh, the cuttlefish might be deadly according to Jack Sparrow, but I don't think it is in this game. They've got nothing to work with to CGA. They have a hope and a dream, but they have a Nexus turret that's about to fall and does so as I speak about it. In goes Cassin for the final time. The wild growth is there alongside the heroic entrance, and they just don't have enough. They hand themselves in on a silver platter, and Jinx picks them up. They get wrecked, they get down, and Jinx will spray paint her name all over the Nexus. V3, 20 kills to 1, close this one out in dominating fashion.
CGA get vandalized by the Jinx. As you say, spray paint everywhere, leaving their mark on this game. V3, for me, sadly, as much as it's a very dominating game, they didn't even have to show me that much there. Because that is exactly what the comp was designed to do. It's exactly what they wanted to happen. Nothing happened nothing happened outside of the script that was written for them. They now go up against Rascal Jester. Let's see if they give them a bit more of a challenge.
Yeah, CGA once again go one-on-one. V3 have an exceptionally dominating game, and it sets us up so beautifully for the game to come after this. But before we can start talking about V3 versus Rascal Jester, we ought to talk about this game, and that means going on a quick break so we can gather our thoughts. Hang around for a minute or two, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. After V3 handily dismantled CGA, Nomera, it was honestly the other side of CGA in general, and no more clearly than unfortunately in the jungle matchup. We said it's a litmus test for both of these teams. Mujin got 100% kill involvement in the early game. Cassin 0-2-0 on the Xin Zhao struggled this time out.
And I mean, as much as you can praise Mujin for it, it's also about Cassin basically handing the kills over on a silver platter. It was very obvious that game that Xin Zhao cannot be the one to lead the charge, which is a problem because that's what Xin Zhao wants to do. This was a first pick though, right? But when you have so many counter-engaged tools, so many disengaged tools, you need someone with that ability to get out. And of course, Nation was going for the tier early, going for the cooldown, which is nice. It gives you the ability to jump back and forth, but wasn't really leading those aggressive plays in the same way. Ace gets on the board with 2 early kills. Suddenly picking off the Galio is not so much of an option. And CGA, they fall apart in the early game in a way that was much more detrimental to the late game plans compared to how they did against Sengoku, but at least they had that glimmer of hope with their team fight later on.
Yeah, let's talk about that then, because the bot side once again gets kind of demolished.
Rolled.
People turn up. You saw junglers looking for lane ganks a lot, but this time out, it's a Jinx that gets ahead.
It is. And this is one of the things we've seen occasionally versus CGA, where you know that they're looking for the late game team fight. So if you can just draft a better late game 5v5, they don't necessarily know how to split the map, and they don't necessarily know how to deny you that engaged as well. In fact, actually, we have ourselves a clip of what happens exactly when CGA choose to go all in when all of the big cooldowns are up. Yes, decent chunk onto Hollow. You're still 3,000 gold down at this point. Hollow starts this fight at 2/3 HP, but has a heal, about 3-4 different shields coming through, and they get to survive. It's all well and good having a temporary front line from your Gwen and your Xin Zhao, but even then, with the Sunder already built up from the Volibear, you don't really get to survive in the front line either, because they get out DPS with this lead coming through. V3 win all of these grouped up fights. For me, this was the nail in the coffin, which really sealed it for me, because by losing that much gold as well, you compound your issues.
Yeah, and this is after another game where the bot side fell apart, as we said. First turret goes down in bot lane. All plates go down in bot lane. It's not the Kalista, it's the Jinx. It's a Jinx with everybody around her who's able to support her. It's the Lulu that survives attempted top lane dives. It's Galio gets a load of kill involvement early, and then we saw the grouped up fights which CG want to go for. That's how they get back into the game, right? And they just couldn't do it this game. And then, we talked about it. Like by the time they were splitting the map, it was a minute until Infernal Soul, literally. And I guess at this point, I want to ask this question about, okay, so for CGA, that was Gwen, which, strong pick at the current meta. That is Xin Zhao for casting, is something he's shown to be comfort, and Nahion's LeBlanc. What should they have done differently this game?
Not 5v5 with all cooldowns and summoners available. I think that one's a pretty easy one to check off the list. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I'm quite disappointed with how... it's quite obvious in the tone and how I've been speaking about it. I am disappointed with how CJ played this, because you had potentially a very good set of side lane matchups. If Cassin doesn't give away early kills to the Galio, that is something which the Gwen runs through. Gwen cannot... there's almost like no losing trade paths for the Gwen at that point, and the Lulu doesn't really want to go against LeBlanc either. The worst thing you can do is pile into them, give them early gold, and then give them the 5v5 that they really want.
What do they do?
The worst thing. The worst possible thing. That's why I'm so annoyed, because we saw the best sides of CGA in that last game, saw the absolute worst side. It's very heads down play, looking for a play instead of understanding the state of the game. Friends with being heads up play. And they need to sort that out if they want to be a top team in the LJL.
It's all well and good being able to play from a deficit, but giving up that kind of gold lead, trying to 5v5 versus that kind of comp, is unfortunately going to be the death knell for CGA in this game. I want to lolook forward briefly at this point as well. We have got a bit more time as it stands at the minute with the way the post-games are working, so I think we do have time to just touch on the fact that now V3, 3-0, look really strong after this game. It was, frankly, a commanding, I think is the term, victory. It sets them up well going into this Rascal Jesters game. What are they thinking right now?
So I think V3 are very happy with this game for a few reasons, but potentially not as many as you would like to see from a game that dominant, right? Because that game fell into, we had a draft which exceeds in 5v5, and all we did was 5v5 that game. They fed us some early gold that got us on the fast track to get to that point. They responded well to what CGA did. They didn't really do much outside the box there. They didn't really do much to excite me in Loris, because they didn't have to. Against Rascal Jester, who are coming up next, they certainly will. Rascal Jester also came out of week 1 with a 2-0, and similarly with V3, had a win over DFM. Now, DFM looked out of sorts in week 1 in some ways. They showed that they still had their team fighting prowess and a lot of individual big plays, but they were outcomped in some cases and outplayed in other cases by both of these teams. These two right now are on-form teams in the LJL. V3 will need to be creative in the way that CGA were in their first game. But they will also need to have those draft advantages they're hoping for versus Rascal Jester. We need to see the best parts of what CGA brought in that first game, and then also V3 sticking to the course with their heads up play, understanding their state of the game to take a dominant win versus Rascal Jester in the same kind of fashion, you know?
Absolutely. But with that to whet your appetites, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back after this break. And when we are back, it will be our match of the week here on the LJL OU. V3 Esports versus Rascal Jesters. I cannot wait. Stick in your seats and get ready for this one. It's going to be an absolute banger.